Hey guys, welcome back to my Create MERN Stack tutorial series. And today we are going to connect our previously created front-end user create form and then previously created backend API that creates the user in database. So we are going to connect these two and make it work. So when user goes and fills up their data in the form, it will send the data to our backend and creates the user and sends the status, the feedback back to the user. We are going to manage our network status using Redux toolkit. So before we dive into the coding, let me show you at the end of the day what we're going to build today. So we are going to work in two apps separately. So now you're going to be working like a full stack developer because you'll be working on our client-side API and a front-end React app. So we're going to switch between API side of the application and the React client-side application with React and the backend API with the Node RESTful API. So what we're going to achieve is, now in previous tutorial, we created this registration form. So let's say you are a new user, you want to create the new account. Let's say I'm gonna put email.8 and then create all the information, including password, valid password. So what happens once I submit this all data, say user is created, right? But if I try to submit again, it says the email address has an account already because I just created. So I have this email, right? Now, if I try to go to login and put the email, and if I put that password, now I cannot log in. It says your account has not been verified. Please check your email address account before you're able to log in. So what happens when our backend API registering user in our database here in MongoDB, it sends us an email. So we are basically using node mailer to send the email. The email sends with the Ethereal. So Ethereal gives us the link to access the email. So this is the email transaction. So if you were to configure your valid email SMTP, this email should be received to the user who has provided this email. So I provided fake email, so of course it's not going to go anywhere. So that email will say, hey, please verify your account as a new user. And here it says, hello, please follow the link to verify your account. So in order for that client to be able to log into our system, they need to visit to this URL. So this URL, as you see before, it was loading. So that means it was talking to our backend API server to verify if the URL is valid or not. So now your account has been signed in. So what if they try to log in again? Verify again. It says invalid request because user has been already verified. Now let's go back to our app again and try to log in with the same information. There you go. Now we are able to log in. We have successfully completed whole transaction in this tutorial. So again guys, the front end of the form, let me log it out. Just want to let you know that this form was created in previous tutorial, and the backend half of the backend, only registration part of the backend was created earlier in earlier tutorial as well, and rest of them we are creating, verifying everything we have done in this tutorial. So it's gonna be a little long tutorial guys, I know, but if you stick around all the way to the end, you're gonna learn a lot from this tutorial. Hey guys, if you're here for the first time, my name is Proj from Dented Code. I create tutorial related to full stack web development, and if you really want to step up your full stack development skill, please subscribe the channel, turn on all the notification, and if you like the tutorial, please give me a thumbs up. That will help me with the YouTube algorithm. With that saying, let's jump into the computer and do the coding. Okay guys, this is our project, client API and the front-end CRM. Let's open them in our VS Code editor. So I'm going to use two different VS Code editor to open this project separately so that we can work separately, right? Okay, all right, so our client is open. Let's run it, npm start, and let's do the same thing with our front-end application as well here. Okay, our front-end application is loading on our browser. So our backend is ready as well. As you can see, the application is ready on localhost. Okay, yeah, our application is open. So what are we going to do is going to connect this registration form to our, let's go to our API folder. Here we have, if you go to rest.http, again guys, if you have been following along, you should have all the code with you. If you don't have, I will provide the code repository link into the description below. Just check that out and you can simply clone the project. So we're going to send the request to this URL endpoint with the following, at least following data. So once we send this data to this URL endpoint, we will get either success message or fail message. So let's work on that. Okay, I'm gonna put on the side this first. So let's see what's our work process. Let's go to our, let me minimize that. Where the form is, src, and our page, our registration page. This is the page where we are loading our form. So the form is basically its own separate component. So maybe we work on form, registration form component. Let's go there. Okay, so this is the form. We don't need that for now. Okay, let's open this one. So this is our form. In the previous tutorial, we created this form, and whenever we submit the data here, let's do one thing quickly. Let's provide few default value here so that we don't have to individually type all the time. We need to do some testing. So let's go to our state here. We are in the registration form.component. Okay, so here what we're gonna do is provide some data here for now. So I'm gonna say provide my detail. If I save this file, we should have this form populated. So now you can see the data we have provided here. Now this one is tested on key on change event. So since we already have all the data here, it's not gonna get updated. So what we can do, just put 1 at the end, and just to trigger this on change event. So I just put 1 behind these passwords just for our reference. Okay, so if we submit this form, all it happens now is just console logs the form data, which is here. That's coming from basically our, if you go to handle on change is the one where it detects all the password and stuff. Okay, here handle on submit, this is what happened. Let's see our workflow. Let me quickly write down and then I'll come back here. So today's workflow gonna be this. We're going to connect user registration form that we just see to our backend RESTful API, which I showed you before, and manage the network status with Redux toolkit. And we are going to email user the user verification link to confirm their email address. And then once they receive the confirmation link, when they click that link, user has to come to our front end, and we need to create that page to handle the link. And then we need to handle that user request, and then make sure if the link is valid, user is active, otherwise user is inactive. Okay, let's work on that. So in order for us to manage the network status of our connecting the API, we need to start working on our user slicer. Let's create the reducer file, and then we start working on that. And let's create in our registration page. Where is the registration page? Here, since this is the registration form is its own feature, let's create the reducer here next to the same file. So I'm gonna call it user registration slice.js. And here, first thing first, we need to import this one, the create slicer. So I'm just gonna copy here. And after that, we need to create the initial state. I think I can copy that one as well. So in our case, yes, we need our status, we need our error, and we don't need is auth now. Just let's remove that, and let's create this slicer. So I'm gonna call user again, same thing, const user registration slice, and we need to create call this create slicer to create the reducer that will turn our reducer into the action creator. So this is a function that takes a huge object. So there are 3 parameters we must provide. The first one is the name. I'm gonna call it user registration, and the second one is the initial state that we just defined up there, this initial state. Let's put that here, and the third one is the actual reducer we needed. So we need to write this keyword, it's important. So inside the reducer now we can make our state. So we will have 3 states. So I'm gonna say registration only so that it's still meaningful and not too long. Registration pending. It takes state as an argument. Let's say state, and let's create a arrow function. And inside arrow function here, so we need to, okay, basically here we have 2 parameters we receive action. So this action will have a payload. So we will talk this about more later, but in our pending case, we only have to do is the is loading pending is true. So we only want to do that, and to access our is loading, we need to go through the state. So that's the part of the object. So we only going to say is loading true when the registration is pending state, and we going to do same thing with the registration success. And here we don't need action because we are just assigning tree value and updating our state. And here in action we receive payload. Actually here we don't even need to receive payload. If it is success, we say the is loading. Okay, let's destructure the payload from the action, and I'm gonna say is loading false here. Now the state is loading is false because we already received the feedback from our server. Okay, let's also provide the I think I'm gonna provide two more things. Let's say status. And actually we don't need the error, we can do message only straight away, right? We'll get the status here and we'll put the message here. Okay, so in the pending state we don't need to do anything. In our success state, what you're gonna do is, so we're going to access the status here. So go to the, again, do the state dot status equals to, now it's gonna be success, right? And the dot state dot message would be whatever comes in our payload. Okay, so let's do same thing for our error state. If we have any network error or we got some issue, we can do, now we need to do this false, and this one gonna be error and the message is payload. And now we need to export these reducers. So we created reducer here, but create slicer, what it does is that it will turn these reducer into the action creators. So let's do that. I'm going to say const. So basically with this function now we can access two things. One thing is the reducer and the actions. So what does that mean? Let me show you. Const so the create slicer turns whole this object a reducer or the set of reducer, and then turn these reducers as action creators. So now we need to export them individually as well. So let's do const, actually let's do export default reducers first, reducer not reducers. So basically it's a whole object from this slicer, and now we can do name export here for our action creators, which we can destructure from our actions. So like how we did here, if you can see that. So this one will turn into action creator as I said before. Let's write their name, can be success both. Sorry guys, so it will be error here. Okay, just save the file. So that means we are ready to import this file in our root reducer. So go to our root store.js. So here we need to import that so that we can see in our state. I think maybe I should show you that first. If we go to our Redux dev tool, in our state we only have tickets, login, user, and open ticket, but we don't have a registration here yet. So we need to load our Redux reducers and load into our state here. So to do that, first let's import this, the reducer we have exported from our file here. Let's do that. So that's in our components inside the I think was the this folder name registration form, and inside the registration form we have user registration slice, and let's give them name registration reducer actually, and let's add this one in our root reducer so that it will be shown in the root store. So let's call it registration and pass the whole file here. Now if we save this file and go back to our browser, now we should be able to see our new state here. There you go, in registration, and this is the initial state. So based on this state, later on we will update the status here. Okay, that part is done. Now we need to start integrating that part with our form at the front end. What I'm going to do, I'm also going to create another file here called the action. So let me create a file. Okay, so what we're gonna do here is not user action, sorry, let's maybe write user REG action. That's registration start form. So in this file, what we're going to do, we're going to do actual action, like what are the action that we're going to create. For example, send the registration form, right, data. So those kind of action we're going to define here, so that here whatever we write function that has the responsibility to do that actual action and then update our store. So first thing, let's because since we're going to use our state, maybe let me make it smaller, see side by side, I don't need to see that. Okay, since we need to update this state while we're sending the form, let's import these action creators which we have exported here in our user registration action. So import is from the same folder, so that's user registration slice, and what we need to do is import all of these things, and now we are ready to define our action. So first action, user registration. So what this function going to do is it will receive the form data from our form component, and then it will call the API to send the data to the server and receives the feedback from the server and then updates our Redux store. Okay, this is what it's gonna do. So let's do that first. Let's start working with update Redux store. So in our initial stage, so there are 3 stages we have: registration pending, registration success, registration error. So at the beginning, as long as client hits the submit button of our form here, so that is triggering the pending state. Since we're going to update our store, let's make it async. So what happens, we can receive we can create this user registration action as a high order function which also receive the dispatch. So let's dispatch this one first, registration pending. We don't need to pass anything, right? Because in our slicer here, registration pending, we are not expecting any action or payload here. So we can simply do that. And now this one is done, and then let's make another copy. So this is at the beginning stage and this one is the success state. So let's say, sorry, error state. You know what, actually let's write the code in the try catch block. In case if we get any problem, we can always dispatch the error state, and let's send the message. We'll have the error also, error dot. Okay, so if we have any problem, we dispatch the registration error action creator. So we don't need this now. Okay, I'm gonna copy this out now. The rest of the thing going to be done in the try block. So now we haven't created the API that calls our backend API. So let's do that. Let's see if we have done already something. See, in API folder, we have ticket API, user API. Maybe we can reuse this user API. Yeah, why not? Let's use this. Okay, so what we're gonna do, before we go there, let's have a look at our URL endpoint, which we checked earlier. Here, so we need to call the post method to this URL endpoint to send our form data, right? Let's copy that, go to user API. We could have created another API called registration API, but since it's related to user, maybe we can just utilize same file. Maybe before logging, we should have a user registered first, right? Let's make it in order. I'm just gonna copy whole thing. I'm gonna say user registration. I think we're gonna have name collision issue later on in our action file, but we will fix that later if it does. So we will receive form data, and then now we're gonna use Xio to do the post method. So now we need the API first, where to send. So this is where we're going to send. So we already defined root API like this. So now we only need user. Okay, so that means user profile already has this. So okay, we can reuse this form. So I want to see where it's been used. Okay, use as a get method. So this is the good thing about the following a RESTful API standard. So you can call same URL endpoint with different method for different purpose. So this is what exactly we're going to do. So we have to send the post data to this b1/user. Let's update our destination URL, and we're going to send form data. So if everything goes fine, we will receive response definitely, and the data we will have inside the, so whatever server responds the data, that will be inside the rest of data. And if we have a success, we will not need to send to the session storage and local storage. That's from the previous. So we can simply say resolve rest of data. I want to see as well what it comes, so let's do that. And we can now export this function. Okay, it's already name is exported. So this now function has been exported from this file. Let's go in our user registration action and import this API calling function. So import, it's in API folder. So let's go up a bit, go to API folder, go to user API, and we need to export this user registration form. So what it expects is just the form data. So what we can do now is in our API call, this part, we simply say const result. We can do await and send the form data to this function. So again, if we use wait here, we need to define async like so. Okay, so here in the result, we have I want to see what we have in our result, right? Let's see first, because it's been a while since I created that backend API. So make sure we know what it has. I want to just save it, and then I still want to, let's say dispatch is a success regardless anything, yeah? So success, I assume the result will have some message. If not, we will have an error. Okay, let's see what it prints out here. I want to now call this. Okay, before we can make it work, we need to call this action actually in our component where we have a handle on form submit. So go to our registration form. If you remember here, we talk about this consoling log. Now instead of consoling log here, we're gonna call, okay, here before that we need to import that function. Go on the top and say import, that's in the same folder, user action. So from here, it's called user registration like so. We also need to import use dispatch from React Redux, and then let's define the use dispatch just right under the form here. We can say const equals to use dispatch. It's a function. Now we can use dispatch to dispatch the form data inside our handle on submit form here. So what are we dispatching from here is the action that we need to, actually we have just imported this one. We're dispatching this user registration action here when the form is submitted, and let's pass the new user data. So we can comment this out, we don't need it. Now what we are doing is first we're creating the form, and when we have a form submit action handle, there we are calling the action that calls the API and then returns the feedback from server and updates our Redux store. Yeah, that's what happens. That's what we are doing now. Okay, let's save that and give it a try. If there is no error, seems like there is. Let's see. Has already declared. I knew that we might have this problem before, so that's not a problem. So what we have to do is go back to our action. Let's change the name. So I'm gonna say create new registration. Okay, user. Okay, new user. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna say new user registration and save that. And we need to export this actually from here, and then we need to import this one in our file component file here, which we did before, but let's do it now. And we also need to update in our onHandle submit. and let's save that. Okay, the error is gone. Don't worry about this warning for now. And let's see in our state what happens. Okay, so I can simply put 1 and 1 so that this condition is gone. Now I'm ready to submit. Let's see this something happens here. See, the user registration action, user registration success is triggered, but did not trigger the pending. I wanted to see the pending too. And let's see. Okay, success, new user has been created. Seems like we actually got that data from server. That means it's actually connected. So all we have to do now is just provide the feedback on the top saying that this message, the user has been created. Let's go back to our API project here, and let's go to this URL endpoint. So that comes, I think, user. Let's go from the app. Maybe let's make bigger. Okay, in our app, if you see the user router here, let's go to this, because we are accessing to v1/user post method. So that's in this file. We need to just find the root slash with the post method. This is where it is. So here, okay, this is first thing I saw. We need to update. So it would be status error. So in the success as well, let's pass the status and the success here. We can simply do console log for our debugging purpose. But here you can say where in here, what we can say, if error.message equals to, so what we can say, if we can say, because as we can see, we got this like a duplicate key error collection. So simply we can use this one and say, let's say if the error message dot includes this text of a string, then we can say, I'm just gonna define message here. You know what, let's message right here, let's do let message equals to, say, unable to create new user at the moment, please try again or contact administration. Okay, so the reason I put let here is that if this is the case, we can override this message saying that this email already has an account. Okay, let's send that message. We don't need to do this now. If we save this one, and let's go back in our front-end application now, in our user registration. So we already know we're gonna get the message with the status. If we have an error, we can invoke the error action creator. If you have success, we can do success message action creator. So let's do that here. I'm gonna minimize that. I'm just gonna make small on the side that, and in our front end, go to the user registration action. Here in the result, we have we have a status. Based on status, result dot status. If it has the success, then we trigger the success. Sorry, not trigger. We dispatch the success registration success action creator. Else, I don't need else, but I'm just saying else here. We can dispatch the error. Yeah, this one error. But we can write this much better way. Okay. So what we can do basically, so if, let's write in ternary, so easy. So that means we can do if this one is true, if this case is true, dispatch this action here. If anything else, dispatch the error message. This is the ternary operator, guys. Is question marks. Before question marks is a condition. After question mark is the true condition, and after the colon is a false condition. Okay, so okay, yeah, I think that will definitely work. Now I'm gonna just leave the console out. But now if we save it, if we don't have any error, yes, which we don't, let's again put 1. So if we send same data, we should get the error message. If I send that, okay, it's not triggering, or it is. It's pending. Seems like there is some problem in our server side. Let's go quickly check that. Yeah, we have an error saying error.message includes is not a function. Oh, okay. I think the include, I think the spelling is wrong. Yeah, that should be the correct spelling. Let me try one more time. Send new request and see. Okay, there you go. Now status is error. This email has been already. Okay, this email already has an account because we created this before. If I just update this one new email, so we should have the success message here. The new user has been created. Okay, the error is fixed. If we go in our backend server, I don't see any error here. That was the before error. Okay, now let's display the message in our form on the top of the form. Yeah, so let's do a few things. So while let's go to the form now. We don't need anything else. Okay, so here we need few things. First, I'm gonna import spinner from the React Bootstrap and alert. Okay, so on the top of the form, just let's under the line maybe. Okay, maybe let's do here new row. Why not, right? Okay, so the whole row will hold only few things. So we need to, okay, before we do that, let me show you something first. So you need to go to the Redux store first and know what is our state. So our state inside the registration, we can access this message. First, we need to pull the information out of the store on this component. And once we have this data, based on that data, we check the condition and we display the message here. So to do that, we need to use something called use selector. This use selector allow us to load whole state, and from that state we can only get the data which part of the state we are interested in. So just import the use selector from the React Redux, and just right after the okay, just before the use state, what we can do here is const. I'll come back to that later. So we can pass use selector, and this one will give us a whole state of our Redux root store. So we don't need all the data. So simply we can only ask for registration. So we can just return dot registration only from the whole state. So if we return only state here, we'll have is loading, status, and message. So we will receive this one as an object. So what we can do, simply we can destructure those value here. So we can start with say is loading status and the message. So now we have these three variable. Let's make use of these three variables. So in here, what we can do, where we just created row here, if we have a message, right, then we can run alert, and alert has a variation. Okay, and inside the alert we can pass the message. We're gonna come back to this in a second. And if it doesn't have anything, if it doesn't have message, or we can simply do an operator. We don't have to do that way. If we have a message, we alert the message. Let's go next to the button. Next to the button here. After the button, what I want to do is run the spinner that we imported before. So spinner takes two properties. So spinner needs two props here. So we need to pass the variation. I'm gonna say maybe info. That's just the color of the spinner. And the animation, you need to tell what sort of animation we want to see. I'm gonna say border and save that. So what happens now, if we try to send the form, the spinner will load here. Let's try to send the form. There you go. The spinner is loading. And let me send some message as well. If we, in our user, I don't need API, we don't need user action at the moment. In the slicer, if I, let's say, mark something in the message here, for example, now we will see that, let's say this is the success one. We're just marking the data here. And you are watching this message coming from there. Now I want to put in the background color. So to do that, we need to go to the message here, somewhere we have just put before. Yeah, we need to pass the variation. So in variation, so if success, actually not if success, the status, where is our status? This status. So what I'm gonna do, if the status equals to success, then we're going to say the class name we're going to do like variation is, let's say, success. This is the class name that provided by the Bootstrap. Otherwise, then we're gonna say danger. So the success will give us the green background, the danger will give us the kind of red background, so which we can just check now. See, you see this green kind of background because we have success message. But if we go back and update our status to error or anything except the success, it will be like a red message now. So our spinner is working, everything is working. So I don't like the idea spinner is keep spinning properly. And then of course, I think because we have put is true somewhere, we can definitely update that. Actually, we need to make the use of is loading. So we only want to show our spinner. Where is the spinner again? Spinner, if the is loading is true. So if you pass this one and put in the n operator and pass this one inside this curly bracket, and if you save that, we don't need that actually. Save that, that's still gonna be fixed as well. There you go, everything is done. Let's do one more. Okay, let's remove that and let's do one more real try, and so that we can finish with this. I'm gonna go to our user registration slice and just remove everything from there. So let's do one success and one fail test. So I'm going to make it larger, and here again we need to just put the password. So I think we're gonna have a fail state first because the email already exists. Let's submit this form. I think that was pretty quick. We couldn't see the spinner here, but it has definitely worked. And in our state, you can see the status is changed and action has been triggered to the registration error. Actually, I don't see the pending status here. That means there is something wrong. Let's go back to our action, which is user action. Okay, yeah, that's why we haven't called the action. I did call before. I think somehow I delayed it myself. Okay, so we need to dispatch our pending status first. If we save that, right, and now we should see what we are expecting. So we should see first the pending action triggered and then the success or fail. So if I submit, probably we're going to see the spinner as well. There you go, we saw the spinner. Now we can see the registration pending and registration error. The error message is here, which is this email has an account already. This email already has an account. I think you can write better message than this. And let's change the email address to email 1, right? And if we submit this one, now again we get this registration pending and registration success. And now our message is updated to this. Okay, the new user has been created. If we click here, you can see this old message is updated by the new message here, and the status and the is loading as well. So this part is done. Probably I will just commit this one in our stage area so that you can see the git commit and you can change the code. So compare the code with my code based on this commit history. Okay, I have said here user registration form is connected with backend API. So I'm just gonna commit that message so that if you see and compare your code with mine, you can go and find our commit history and check this commit message, and you can compare the code. Okay, the next person is one thing is done. Now we have already submitted our form. Now this is, we are now going to work in the backend. So the front one is done. In the backend side, what we have to do is when the user is created successfully, let's create one unique URL and we'll send that URL to user email and then let user to click that email. And if the link is still valid, let's turn that user into the active user. So let's work on that. So what we're going to do is we're going to work on our backend API. So I'm going to put down our front end, which we are not working at the moment, the backend here. So first thing, let's start with let me maybe show you what happens is that every time we create the user, it will hit this router and we will use which will redirect the express to this router file, and everything happens inside this not get user, inside the create new user here. So here what happens, every time we receive the data, we destructure data from the body because we send the data as a post method, and we hash the password so that when we save the password, we are not saving plain password, we're saving like hash password, so that even hacker gets their compromise our database, they can guess the user password. And then we will put everything inside our database, and once there is no issue, then we will response to our front end saying operation is successful, new user has been created, and also send the user result all. So what we're gonna do here, once the user is created, we're going to send the confirmation email here. We probably have to create another function that handles the email to send to the client and send us the response back here. So we'll work on that. But before that, I realized that we have to do the server side validation for the data that coming from user. This is no guys, no. So we have to, no matter what, always validate the data coming from user. Never ever trust the data coming from user. So first thing, let's work on that. So we have a middleware that we've been working before, form validation middleware. Go to that file. So basically what we're using is we're using Zoe package to validate the data. So what we're gonna do, we know we are expecting this data only from the client side, from front end, right? So what we can do is, I'm just gonna go at the bottom and I'm just gonna copy one of the above one, so to reduce the typing time, but I'll go over it. So I'm gonna call it, say, new user validation. Yeah. So since we are going to use this as a middleware, I'm gonna show you how in a second. We always receive request, response, and next from the Express server. So here we need to define what exactly we are expecting in our data object that coming from from the client. So these are the data we are expecting from the front end form to send to the client in order for the server to create a new user. So these are the only, like, let me show you. See, every time we send data, we send as an object, right? Like a key and pair value. So these are the key we need to provide here, and then we need to provide the condition here, say what type of data we are going to use. So in our case, the name, if we go up, we have, this is how we need to define the rule. So you can predefine here or type this one directly at the bottom with directly here, like here. So what happening here is that if there is, let's talk about short string, because most of the data are short string. So Zoe will provide, you need to say, okay, what's the data type? String or number. And after that, do you have minimum and maximum character? So, or if you have a date, you provide date like that. That way, the Zoe validation test against the value. The one you're sending is a string or object, for example. And if it is object, you said, hey, it's not valid. And it will send an error message, which we can capture. So in our case, we have a phone number, name, and things. So what we're gonna do is, we're going to need only, I think, short string and number. Let's define the new variable, new condition for phone. Yeah. So phone number is a Zoe, is a type number, and it has a minimum number. So in min, what I'm gonna do is, in Australian number format, it starts with 04, and I'm just gonna put some zeros. So at the bottom, at the end, I'm gonna put 1, so that people cannot just put 1 like 0. And the max, I'm gonna put all like this, but I'm gonna provide 05 like that. It should work, and it is required. We need to pass this required as well. And now I can use this one as my condition to the phone number down here, where, let me just, not this. Yeah, so for the phone, now I can simply pass that. So let's do same thing for the name. So for the name, we need only short string, and you see here required, that means it forces client to send this data, but this one doesn't force. So in our case, what we can do, I provide this one to reuse somewhere else, so that if I need any required place, I can simply type the required at the back. For the name, yeah, short string and required. And now I'm gonna copy that for other data. So let's pass. So I'm going to, you know what we're gonna do? I'm gonna see here just the value. So okay, once we get that, this is the schema is defined. Now we need to verify that. So to do that, we just use schema.validate. This function will take the actual data that is coming from our front end and check against this condition. And if everything pass, we pass the condition. Otherwise, it will throw data in value.error. So we can simply console out this value. I'm gonna return from here only so that code doesn't execute further, and send the data to check. Before that, we need to import this. First export it from here and import in our user router. So the way you import is like here, just pass like that, and you need to import on the top here. Let's see if we have any middleware with the form validation. Okay, yeah, file has been used already here, so we can pass there. And then the way we use middleware is just in the router here, just pass with the separation. So what happens, everything is passed here inside this validation. If everything is passed inside this validation, there is something called next. So we can response back to client from here, or we can pass the router to the next middleware with this key function, so that then the expression, or now the code is next code to execute is somewhere here. Okay, so we are just checking if there is anything on our value or not. So go to the registration, just gonna send it and see in our console log. It's not gonna get any value here. It's going to be spinning for a while. Let's see if we have any issue here. Okay, all right, now we have the data coming from the front end. We don't have to, okay, value, there is an error. You can see that phone must be less than or equals to this number. So that means we have an error in the phone. Our condition to the phone is, let me see, maybe it's too long. Okay, I think we don't need 0 anyway for the front. Let me go to our form and let's put 5 here and try to submit the data again and see what happens. Okay, still say, okay, now confirm that condition is pass. Now it's saying confirm password is not allowed. We would have seen this error. You know what I can do? Maybe to see that error at the front, maybe let's go to our validation again and make some changes. Instead of returning our process from halfway, let the function run until the error. So I'm going to if there is an error, let the server return the error message so that we can see at the front end. So now DDC already is working. So confirm pass is not allowed. That means we don't have to send the confirm password here. You can actually accept that if you want to, or there's 2 ways you can do it. We don't need this confirm password here, right? So basically what you can do is when we send the data from the front end, let's go to the front end for a second. In our on our registration form, we don't need to send this confirmation password. So we can basically we can remove this one from the, so let's update that here. On handle change, I'm gonna call it const new registration, and here let's pass only these data. So what I want to do, I'm going to destructure the value from this state, our state, to const bracket from new user, and let's destructure the value that we need. Okay, I'm just going to remove that. I just copied from the initial state, so that, and now save that, and you just pass that, copy everything, and now pass this value for this object, and now we can, okay, need to be equals to here. So now basically we are sending data that we needed. So when we save this file, now we don't have that problem coming. So if we put 1 and 1 here, try to submit this, name is required. Okay, now we get another problem. Let's go to check the server side and see what it says. It doesn't say anything, but it says name is required here. Seems like it's not sending properly. Name is required. Okay, it's because we forgot to include the name here. Save that file. Name, we got phone, everything. Let's try to send the form again. See, confirm password is required. Okay, did we just put confirm password while we're talking? Let's go to our server side, and if we have put that, now we don't need that, this one. So okay, first you can put here and you don't have to delete from front end, or you delete from the front end and check the condition here, because we don't need to store this one in our database. So I prefer not even receiving from the front end. So just like that, if you save it, now we should receive the data but no error. So this is the previous error, so it's still pending our response. Now we can, okay, we are now able to do the validation. So if we return this, remove this return keyword from here, now the router will go, Express will go and run the next middleware, which is, let's save the file, we close this part is done. Now I start working on here. So the next thing we need to do is call the email function to send the email. So I think we have already worked on our email here. If you go to our helper folder, email.helper is the place where we have all our email. Okay, so this is, okay, we are using Ethereal for our, like, just for testing purpose. This is like a fake mail server that help you with receiving and sending email with the node mailer. So we are using node mailer package, of course, to handle our email. So what we're going to do is, if you see here in our mail processor, we are using switch type, and here we passing what email we creating, because we have few cases that we need to send email to client. So instead of writing each file for each email processor, we just write in the switch condition and then process from there. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to just copy this case, for example, update password success, and just copy down, and I'm just going to rename this one saying, let's say new user confirmation required, and inside let's make the data. Okay, this is the default going to be in our email. The email is from the client. So what happening here is we're receiving email, we don't need pin number for the password and the type. So in email is the email that client sends through their form here, and now in our subject we can say please verify your new user, and in the body we can say please follow the link to verify your account before you can log in. I think that's enough message. And this is for plain text version. The server, sometime email server cannot receive or don't want to receive the HTML version, so you can always pass this plain text, and this is the HTML version. And down here what we're gonna do is we send the actual link to click. So how am I gonna do is, okay, we are able to write this multi-line because we are using template literal within this backtick. So here we're going to pass the actual link. I'm gonna just write down verification link. Oops. So let's create that link. Okay, we can also receive that parameter. Let's say verification link. Just provide default as a empty string. Okay, that's just should be assignment. Yeah. Make sure we have the same as spelled. Okay, now we can call this email processor to process this email, and once the email is processed, we have a method called send info, because this is written as object here. And what send info does is it will take this object and actually sends the mail with the help of our node mailer send mail function. So this one all will work together. Now all we have to do is just pass the email address, type, which we have to be exactly this one, and some verification link, and it should work. Let's go to our user router and let's import that mail helper. So I'm gonna go on the top and see if we already have mail helper. Okay, yeah, we do have that. Let's copy that and okay, I'm just gonna copy from one of the other place we have used. Let's go to the function which we are working on is the here. So we are in the create new user router, and here let's call that function before we are sending message to client, or we can do even after that, really doesn't matter. So call this function, and then we need to pass email. We do have an email, yes, we don't need pin, we pass type. So if you remember type, I said it has to be exactly this one in order for us to run this code. Pass that type, and we need to make sure that we pass this verification link as well. So I don't need the pin here, we just need the verification link. So we'll work on this link now. So what we're gonna do in our verification link, so this is whatever we provide here. When client click on this link, it should take them to the front end. So we have not created page for this one. So what we can do is simply do the registration and pass the registration, or create some page called verification, so which we haven't created yet. So I'm just gonna copy our front end URL, and I'm gonna just give a name on the top somewhere here, say const so basically what you would do is define this root URL somewhere in your environment variable, so that when you update this one in your server side, you can always get that root URL based on where your server is. If you have domain, you can provide the fixed domain, but I prefer using environment variable, and then pass pulled as an environment variable here, and then pass whatever you want to pass here. So I'm gonna say I don't think we have this router at the front end, so we can use that. So I'm going to pass this one, so you'll see what I mean later on. For now, just pass that and save the file. So what's gonna happen if there is no error when we send the form next time? If we send this form, it's probably gonna throw email already exists. Let's create something called email 5. I don't know how many we created before, so I don't even know password yet. So before that, I need to do one thing. Now if you go to our user schema, when we create the user will be created, and any user can just sign in. We haven't before we didn't have verification, so I just put this one is verified as a boolean, so by default is true. So every time we create the new user, we have the is verification. Like before, we don't have that property, so that means any user can register and log in straight away without verifying their email. That's probably not really good idea. So we're going to have this false now as a default value, but when client clicks on that valid link, then we will update this one as a true. So to make it more like a robust, what you can do, you can also create another property called, let's say, random session string. So you can that is more like a more robust in order for you to protect the clients, because in our case in the CRM system, the user supposed not to be able to create their own account, admin supposed to create. So we're just creating this one for you to know how you can create the user from the front end. So in here, what you can do, you can create another property, say, okay, verification code, let's say random 10-digit code, and you can send this verification code along with this URL here, and then based on that one, when user visits to the page, we can grab that session ID and check in our database. If it exists, then do verification. But in our case, what I'm going to do, I'm not going to create another random string, but I would like to use the user ID here instead, because user ID is always unique as well. So this is not the best practice, guys, but I'm showing you how you can do it. Now from there, you can definitely explore more options, and you can do exactly the same process, whatever I'm doing here. So behind that, what I'm going to pass with this string is, because this URL verification only holds the URL for our front end, but it doesn't have any ID. But it would be nice if we can send the ID. Let's say we just send some ID behind it. Okay, user ID here, let's say user ID. So we'll work this one at the front end. For now, just leave like that. And what we do in our verification URL, I'm just gonna concatenate our user ID. we have user ID in our result. So remember, every time we insert, we also getting the user ID. So I'm gonna do user data. I'm gonna do user._id. If we do that, now we'll get the user ID as well. So now let's see in the action what happens. Everything seems okay. Let's go to validation. If we have removed that, the return from halfway, yes, okay, everything should work. Let's go to our front end application and send new user. I think this is still new user. Let's submit the data. Okay, unable to create new user. Please try again. This message coming from where? Let me check. Contact administration. That is from user. Okay, so we have some error here. This is where we returning from. To debug, I'm gonna do console error so that we can see exactly what is the error. So to me, let me see what would have caused the error. New user, okay, that's nothing done, nothing. Console.log result. Maybe the user, okay, this is probably the problem because we don't have a user. We're supposed to have a result.id, but let's see if we can still get the error. I think we fixed it, but we'll see in the console now. Let's submit the form again. There you go. The email already exists. Now let's go 6. When we submit the data, now a new user is created. Great, but has the email been sent? Would we know? We know because there you go, we have printed. So what happened here, when we have a user is created in our user router here, we call this email processor. So when we go to our email processor, we make our body template for the email and we call function called send to actually send the email. And if the email is success or fail, so logging the actually email thread. This is where how we can access to our email. So I'm just going to click this literal link and it will open in the browser and it should give me that link. See, this is the link. There you go. So remember, this is the text we provided as a URL endpoint and this is the user ID, supposed to be user ID. Now we can confirm HC2. Let's go to our database. We haven't been to our database for a long time. And if you go down here, we have starting with 602 HC2 and email with mail 6. Okay, now we have our email as well. So if you have configured your email SMTP, the email should receive to the client, whoever sent that email to, whoever fill up the form. Now let's go back to our mail. So till here, our server side part is done as well. So what we need to do is now we need to create a verification page where we should be able to grab this string and then talk to the server and say, hey, this guy say he want to verify the account. Can you verify for him? And if this is a valid user ID, then we can update the user as a verified user. So if you see here is verified here, now false. So we can update this data. Okay, let's go now. We are not going to work in the client API side, server side, but we are going to work on our front end application. So see guys, as a full stack developer, you have to now back and forth. I could have separated this tutorial in another few small tutorial, but guys, you have been doing all this same thing over and over again. So you should be able to do this everything comfortably. So I hope you are following along. If you have any problem, just take a break, have a coffee or tea, whatever you like, or drink, and then get back to the coding. You should be okay. All right, let's go to our front end. So let's go to the entry page of our front end first. I'm going to close everything out. The entry point is app.js. Oh, yeah, here. So we need to create a new URL here. Sorry, new page. So if I'm not going to need this one for now. Let me go. So in our application, we do have a registration page, but we do not have the verification page. It's just a blank now because there is nothing. So I should have said a 4.4 thing, but you guys can do that, right? If not, let me know. Okay, so what we're gonna do is I'm gonna probably copy the registration background everything what we have in background and just put the detailed information in the form here. I'm going to go to the registration form here, not this one. Go to the page, actually page folder, and here in registration I'm just going to copy this whole folder and rename to user verification. I'll say user hyphen verification page. Inside user verification page, I want to rename that component as a user verification as well, and the CSS as well. This I want to rename it. So since we are renaming the style sheet, so we need to update in our page as well the component, because here we need to import the correct file, user verification style.css. yeah, and we don't need the registration form, we need just the some other data, and we don't need this file. I want to keep the jump button and everything there, and change the name of the registration to user verification. That's the component name. So even though it's a page, it's a component. So here, if we go to that URL now, which is verification, we don't have here yet because we need to import this one in our app.js. Let's import this in our app.js. Let's import that. So this is in the page directory. Inside we have a registration. Is it registration? No, user verification. Yeah, that's the one. Inside user verification we have user verification.page, and the name is user verification. I think we are doing default. No, we are not doing default export, so we need to wrap around with the curly bracket. And now you see this registration, I can just copy this code and pass our URL endpoint, not endpoint, the sub URL here where you want this component to be loaded, and pass this one as a component. And if you save that and if you visit that, see, you should be able to see that. Okay, what I'm gonna make change a little bit here, go to CSS style sheet, I'm gonna say mean height 100, viewport height. Let's set that, and now let's go. We don't need to work on our CSS. Go to our page. Here we need to do a few things. First, we need to grab this value which is coming at the back. So the way you grab that in our router is go to the app, and now you pass the / and pass the colon and provide the key. What key name do you want to use as a variable to hold that value? I'm just gonna give _idea only, and if we save that, and now if we pass anything / like this, the page will load as usual because we have data. But if we don't have this person, now page is not valid. If in your case, if you want to make this one optional, you can always pass the question mark like that, and it should load the page. So, but in my case, I will make sure this one has ID, and now I can grab that ID in our not CSS file, in our page. So let's grab that. So for us to get that, the parameter, whatever, we need to use something called use param from the React Router DOM. This is what we are using. We are using React Router DOM to handle our router on our application. So let's import that first. So that one is called use I think so, yeah. In what use param does is that use param will keep all the value which comes behind this main URL slug, let's say, and pass anything coming as a parameter. So here we can simply say const whatever is coming, just pass that here and say use param, and now we can console dot and see if it's working. And let's do the use param is not exported from React.com. Okay, that should be use params, not param. Now it should work. Inspect to see in our console, there is the data. If I, let's say, put something hit enter. There you go. This is the param now. There you go. We received the param now. So what we're gonna do here is, now we need to send this string to server to verify if that user has the email or not. So what we're gonna do is we're going to start working backward this time. So first we're going to create the API function to call our backend. Okay, this is even longer than I thought it's going to be. Okay, so what I'm gonna do, let's go to create the, okay, so here called API and send the _ID to verify user. Okay, let's do this person. So in order for us to get this verified, we need to create the API endpoint for us to make a call. So now let's go back to our client API and go to, we don't need anything, just go to user router where we have created user registration. So what we're gonna do is just below this one, let's create a new router endpoint. So I'm gonna say verify user after user is signed up. Okay, so here let's copy this whole code and we will go and modify that. So we don't need any middleware here because we are only receiving one data. I'm gonna use patch method here, and I'm also going to say verify so that we know exactly which router we are hitting to. So what we are expecting here is _ID from request.body, and this ID, what we're going to do is, let's remove this thing first. And now we need to, okay, now we need to write the query to update our user database. So now let's leave as it is here. Let's go to the user model. Here we have many functions. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna write a query that updates the is validation. So I'm just gonna copy this password person. So password person, and I'm gonna say verify user. So here we're going to receive user ID. We're going to send from the router, and inside what we're gonna do is we're going to run try catch block. And here what are we doing is we are calling user schema. So in user schema is the schema what we have defined whole database here, and we are doing query over that schema, and we're running find one and update method that takes the source criteria. In our case we have a user ID, right? We can use user ID and we can update the data. So what data we are interested to update is the is verification. Now is verification, we want it to be true. So, and then this one will return the data after user is updated. Look, this way anybody can update anybody's data. So at least we should get another something to make, like narrow down the user is the right user who is sending the request. So in our case, maybe we at least put the email. Let's also receive email from client side. So I'm gonna write, we are working like a backward, guys, okay? Email. So just bear with me. So what we are here doing is we are saying we are going to call verify user method. We're gonna send the user ID and email, and if the user ID and email sent is valid, is found, so this one will do queries like if there is a user ID, given user ID has the same email address, then it will update is verified true. Otherwise it will throw an error or send some other message saying no. So if there is an error, we respond to error, otherwise we reject. If everything goes good, we resolve the data. And now we need to export this from the file. And remember, we are writing this code in user model. Let's import that in our user router. See if user model already imported. Yeah, model user model. Now we can pass this function as well here. Make sure, yes, it is imported. And now let's call this function from our verify user router here. So I'm gonna say const result equals to, we want to await, and we have to use async here, and call that function and pass. Remember, we need to pass two things, ID and the email. We haven't received the email, so let's receive the email here. Need to destructure value here. So receive the email as well as the ID. So we need to send these two things from our front end. So if we have a result.id, then now we can, that means the data is updated successfully. Now we can say rest.send. Actually we do rest.json because we send the JSON data, right? And we send the object with status success and message is your account has been activated, you may sign in now. Okay, with that message. So if I think we should run this in our try-catch block. We don't need this. This is just for you guys to information. So I'm gonna run everything in try-catch in case we got an error, and this is the best practice as well. So this everything goes in try, and if something goes wrong, we need to console log for our debugging purpose. And here now in status we have to say error, and this in the message part we say error.message. Usually error is the object that holds the message property with the actual message of the error. If we have this case, yes, we return this rest.json, this success. If we don't have user.id, then we can say again error invalid request. That's it. Let's say if it's not valid, or if user has been already verified. So actually you can even test one more condition here. So in here you can also test if the user is actually already valid or not. So if user is already valid, then they don't have to again be able to do the validation, so that doesn't make any sense. So that means if user has email, if user have the same ID, and user also are not valid yet, I mean is not verified yet, then only do this thing. Now let's save that and give it a try. I'm going to close that, and now we have a API endpoint to call from our front end. So let's go on our front end now. So guys, hop over to front end application. I know I've been switching around a lot, but I assume that you should be comfortable because how far you have come with this application. If not, let me know. I'll try to help. So go to the front end application. I want to go to the API folder, where user API folder. Now we can see just wrote the user registration API earlier. I'm just gonna copy that whole thing. I'm gonna say user registration verification. So this one will definitely receive the form data, and everything gonna be same, but in our user profile URL, user verification URL, let's make it. We don't have it, we're going to create one now. So let's go up here and let's create that user verification URL. So that is definitely going to be this one, including user and the other things. So I'm going to show you. So we need this one. So this one tells us go to localhost blah blah blah, and then user v1/user. So after that we need concatenate, and we need the verification, this URI. Save that. So our URL endpoint is ready. URL verification endpoint is ready. Our form data is sent. If everything is the usual stuff. So response data, otherwise, okay. If success, response data. If fail, response fail. So let's go to our API here. Okay, in this case, I'm gonna be a little bit, let's say, lazy or do shortcut here. Instead of creating, managing the server state with the Redux toolkit, with the Redux store, let's call it directly from this component and then handle here only. This is a little bit dodgy way, but it will do the work. You need to know all the way, right? So okay, let's do that. So we need to call this one let's import this API function call, user API function called user registration verification in our component. So I'm going to write import, and it is in the API folder. Go two-step up API folder slash user API. There is this function which takes the form data. So now we need to call this one in our use effect. So let's import the use effect from React, because this operation has to be done before the whole component, I mean on the life cycle of the component rendering. That means while page is displaying, actually before displaying the page, I want this operation to happen so that client can see the result. So now let's say use effect. Here we are going to call that function that we just imported, and we're going to pass the data from data, which is we have ID. Let's create a quick const. Okay, let's say dt only for data. That's the user ID, and let's pass the email as well in parameter. So the way we're doing that is go to app, and here we can pass multiple parameters here, like so. Save that. Now you can receive email here as well, and we get this data is ready, and now pass this data and here. So now what happens is, so we are calling this function. So here let's see first, let's call this function and let's log this out, see what we have here before actually we're working at the use effect. So I'm gonna do console log, because I want the actual data, like I need to know what is coming. So res.data. So if I save, and then now if I visit that link, we don't need input here. Just want to make sure everything is okay, and we can console log this one as well, just to see here. I'm gonna go to our browser and check this. So go to the console and see if there is something for us. So if we visit this page, nothing happens. That's not expected. So when you save the file, we should see some change here now. Okay, we'll get back to this. First, you see we have received email and ID from our params, use params here. That's the console log from here. Now, but make sure that, guys, we haven't sent the email from the server side. We'll get back to that later. If you go to our network, this URL is not found, because I see there is a user slash is missing here. Let's go to the API again, and let's quickly update that. Go to user verification. Oh, I need to just pass this one, save that. And now let's see. Okay, whenever we visit to that, oh, we're not found still. Let's go to our server and see what we have written. Yeah, it's a verify only. Oh, actually it's a patch method, that's why. Okay, go to app, go to the front end, go to the API folder, user API, and instead of post, it's a patch. Now save that, and now it shouldn't say this not found. Okay, we have the call to verify, and the response is nothing. It says error, the cast object failed to blah blah blah. Okay, so what it's saying is that, okay, this is invalid. Maybe we should display that message as well. So what I'm gonna do is, maybe let's import something from our user verification page, and import two things from the React Bootstrap. That's gonna be the spinner again and the alert. So what we're gonna do, I'm gonna run, let's create a state. I'm gonna create local state here. So we need to call use state here, and let's create local state here, and I'm gonna call this one is pending. Okay, well guys, this one we could have done through like a managed through the Redux toolkit, Redux store, but I'm showing you other way here as well. And I'm gonna copy 3 of this. I'm gonna say status, and I'm gonna say message, and also maybe don't need that. Okay, so here we will going to get the Actually, I wanted to see something else. Hang on, go to the console. I wanted to see how it's going to come. Okay, it's coming as a status and message here. I can see. Maybe you cannot see. Let me bring it here. So you can see the status and the message. This is how it comes. So let me grab the status and message. Here we can get status and message, but there is a big problem here, guys. Inside the effect, we cannot use await. So it's not allowed to use, even though you use async here. So what we can do is we can create a quick function, say const API call, and in this arrow function, now we can do the async and wait. So just remember that we are not allowed to write async wait inside the use effect. To handle that, we need to create a function, and inside that function we are now allowed. So what we can do basically, that's the result basically here, and then after this result we can console log here to see the actual result, just to make sure this result is printed from here only. So we can just leave some marker, and since you are using await here, make sure to use async here. And now we can call this function right after this. You can use something called if method as well, immediately invoke function, but this is, you can do it as well. It's a more clear way. I like this way. Update this data in our state. So you know what, instead of maybe creating two different, maybe let's create one response state. Sorry about that back and forth, guys. I want to do this one and inside here create, it's an initial state which has actually not here, just write down here, say we haven't created that, we will do that in a second. Initial response, and let's delete the last line. And initial response, let's create just above the function declaration, where we're gonna have the status is an empty string and the message empty string as well. Okay, now we have the initial state that holds the status and message. Now we don't even need to use pending because we can just use state straight away. So what we can do now is, so before calling the status, okay, there's nothing to do. When we have a result, we don't need to console that now. So we set this response this result. So whatever comes in the result from the user verification, which function is this one. See here, it will respond the object like this here, and if everything right, it will respond the object that has the status and message. We can do same thing in the error as well. Let's say if we got some error, then we can say status error, and the message is inside the message.error. And I missed this closing comma, sorry, the inverted comma. Okay, so now I mean either we have error or the success message from here. Now either way we will going to fulfill this object, status and the message, and we need to check whether there is something or not in our response state in order for us to call, otherwise it will be keep calling. So we simply check if there is nothing in this status or message, then only we call this function. So to check that, simply say response.message status, let's say status, either way, doesn't matter. If we don't have that, then only we run this function. So in this current state we run. So as long as there is something here, don't run that function. So once we have this value, it will be updated with the status and the message here. And so once we have updated that value, we need to render the component so that we can get feedback down here. To make that happen, we need to pass this one inside our square bracket, so that use effect know that we need to re-render the function, the component, once this one is updated. And when it's updating, it could again run this function if we don't provide this. Now with that value, we don't need this one. Now with the based on that status, we don't need these two, status and the message, we can write something inside here. So what I'm gonna say is, I'm gonna first call the spinner. So if again, exactly this case, if there is nothing in there, I like to run the spinner, the one we imported from React Bootstrap. And the variation, I'm gonna put just the info, that's the blue color, and the animation. Animation is the border. Okay, that is enough for the spinner to work. And for the message, we're gonna do the same thing. I'm just gonna go in the second line and say, now before, if we don't have the message in status, so the spinner, now let's say if we do have some message or status in our state, then let's run the alert, and here we pass the message, which is inside the response dot message. Oops. And now the alert expects few things, including variation, the background color, variant. So the variant is if the status, this one, is success, just leave the success, right? If this one equals to success, then the class name we're going to use is success as well. If not, we're going to use class name called Danger, that's the utility class. Now we can expect to see something. First spinner, and there you go, the error message. The spinner stopped and error message popped up saying that cast to object failure. This is something to do in the server side that we need to look into it in a second. So our front end is kind of covered up. Now all we have to do is go back and then fix this problem. It's saying object ID fell for value blah 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 blah. Or in other words, we'll update that message. Okay, our front end is done for that purpose. Let's go to our backend again now. See guys how many times running back and forth. So we are in client API application, okay, where we return this error message from here. So instead of sending this error message like that, the system generated error message, we're probably gonna just say this same thing, invalid request. I don't want people to see the system generated message. Okay, invalid request, yeah, that's what we wanted to know. I mean, so the client. But when we look into our error, there is something, let me see in bigger. So it's basically saying that the ID we send is not the valid ID. Of course, it's not valid ID, right? Let's assume we have a valid ID. Let me just copy this for now and pass down as ID. Okay, so now that's saying, so if you go back to user router, so it's saying that it doesn't have a user.id of null. That we couldn't, the model, this function, there's no such a record that has this condition that matches this condition. That's why you got null. So we can simply do if result and then result.id. In case we have result and result has the ID, then we say success. Other than that, we said invalid request. Yeah, and let's save that and then refresh the page, and we should see invalid request. Yeah, okay guys, that is probably done. I'm just gonna remove too many console here. Maybe leave this one. I'll probably save message as well here for you guys to see, because sometimes you don't know where the error coming from. Okay, this part is done as well. So let's to pretend that we have a real user. So before that guys, let's go to user router. Remember how we send the user email on the verification like in verification, create new user route, new user here. We need to now send the email as well, because here we only send before the user ID. If we check the URL here, we only send the user ID, but remember we need user email as well here. The second parameter should be email, so let's update that as well. Here we simply concatenate the / and plus the email from the user. Now I think everything should be done. If we don't have any error, let's do testing. So I want to go to our first homepage. Let's go registration, and this time let's do user 7 and password I don't know, we will see from the back. I'm just putting one at the back and submit the form. Okay, the user has been created, we have success message, and in our backend we get the user success verification response, and at the bottom we also got the email send transaction. So if I open this link, this email is supposed to send to the client email. In our case, we are using just this tutorial to make our simulation of sending email. So now we have this link. Now when we visit this link, there you go, our user has been activated. Now you can sign in. So if we go to, we should have checked our database before, but that's fine. Now refresh the database, and if you go down, see email 7 is verified true, but the previous one is still not. But what happens if user try to visit again? Let's go to our email again. Let's reopen that. Say invalid request. There you go, guys. The email validation is done as well. So there is a lot you can improve. I done is like a very basic way so that you have the fair understanding. You can now use this skill to make as complex as you want to make it. But the fundamental is that. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to leave all the console stuff, everything as it is, and you guys can see. So I'm going to push code for this front-end change. Okay, before adding that, I want to tell you one thing, guys. Now let's go to our front end. There's something I need to show you first. If we go to registration form, we have our fake pre-filled data here. So this is the email. Let's pick the one which is not verified. Is verification false, which has the email 6. So if we use this email, we can still sign in. Go to login, and our password is this one with 1 at the back. See, we can still sign in, which is not good practice. Why? Because when we sign in, we have inspect. Let's go to inspect and go to the network tab. Guys, I'm showing you something like very in detail, actually the process. This is good to know. Okay, there is a bug I can see already. Okay, let me log that out first. I cannot see anything. There is a bug. I'll talk about later. And what I wanted to show is that even if you are not verified, you can still log in, because when we do the login in our backend API, let's go to our backend API. If we go to user router where it says login here, when we log in user, so we able to log regardless we verified or not. But what we can do here, since we have a user here, we're gonna say if the user.isVerification is not verified, then now we can copy this whole message, error 1, and say, hey, you haven't verified your account. So what I have written here as a message is, please verify your account. So now if we go back, we need to make sure we need to return this. Now if we go back to our browser and try to log in with the unverified email and log in, this is what you're gonna see. Your account has not been verified. Please check your email and verify your account to be before able to log in. So all we just did is check that condition before we going anywhere further to our password verification, getting user and blah blah blah. Okay, that is done. Now user cannot log in unless they verify their email. The next thing I just realized, so a quick bug is, let's say our email 7 is verified, right? Before we saw that. If I log in there, check here in our network tab, and our server is keep requesting data. It's never ending. It's gonna crash the server soon in the future. So what I'm gonna do, I'm going to see why it's keep loading. This is to do something in our use effect. So I need to go to dashboard and fix this error. But before fixing, let me save this before it crashes. Okay. I need to log out before it crashes here. So that happens in dashboard. So before I go and fix that error, I'm gonna commit change this one so that you can go to the commit history and compare your code if you have to. Okay, let me quickly do it and then I'll come back to you. I have put user registration and verification added in the backend API. I'm gonna do exactly same for the front end as well. Okay, that part is done. Let's check that bug. What is it? So let's go to the front end of the application, go to our dashboard and see in use effect if there's any suspicious code. You can basically find out. So it dispatches get ticket if the ticket length is okay. I know what happened. So basically it checks, okay, when I log in, okay, I can log in and so, oh yeah, I will, doesn't matter. So if we go to our state, in our state, see in the ticket, it's basically checking if the ticket has any length or not. If there is no ticket, it's gonna keep firing the fetch all ticket item action, which is causing this page to load. So what we can do, when we go to, let's go to the fetch all ticket action. In fetch all ticket action, hang on, even before going there, see what happening every time it calls, right? And then it will re-render the application, and it checks if there is no ticket length. Again, it re-renders. So this is going forever. Anyway, let's go to the ticket action. When we get the fetch ticket here, we can only dispatch this one. We can only dispatch this one if there is any length. We can simply do that. I think that should work. So if the ticket data.result.length, then only dispatch that, because if there's no data in the ticket, so we don't probably need to dispatch it. Login with the valid. Okay, now I cannot log in with my old login detail. Great. Let's copy. I think the email 7 does not have any ticket and is valid. I mean active. Let's log in with 1. Okay, it's loading here, but only trigger once. That means, okay, we don't have that bug. Okay, that is, there are many other ways you can optimize that code, but that will do pretty much what we need to achieve here. So now in order for us to see all ticket, in case if you need to go back and check, so you need to go back to your database and find the main account that you've been using before. What like user account, user login detail you used to log in to do all the adding and doing ticket CRUD operation. So go there and then edit that record and simply add this is you can put that is verified property and pass the value to, just change this to boolean and set true and update that. Now you should be able to log in with the default detail. So let's log out and try to log in with the default. Now everything working as expected. Wow guys, this is a long tutorial. If you are really following along, I'm really proud of you guys. Now there is one more thing to add on this app, one more functionality. So that is when we go to login, we have this forgot password, but we never work on this functionality. This is another one. I think that's the last one, actual last tutorial going to be for this whole MERN stack series. Thanks for watching, guys. Hope you liked the tutorial. Hope you got some value from this tutorial. If you did, then please give me a thumbs up. And if you haven't already, and if you want to learn more about the full stack web development, please do subscribe to the channel, turn on all the notification, and code every day. All the code, again, all the code is available in the Git Repo. The link for the Git Repo should be in the description below. And if you have any issue, please write in the comment section or join me in the Discord channel with the other fellow developers. And you can ask me any question you have. I'm pretty active there. With that saying, guys, you have an amazing day, code every day, and I'll see you in next tutorial. Bye for now.